Hello, everybody. That's not a good start. I had my microphone left on mute because I was coughing a little bit earlier. So let's start again. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you tonight, and thanks for tuning in. So welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. Let me just introduce myself. If this is the first time that you've kind of happened across this live stream, you're really welcome. And we hope that you'll stick around, and it's well worth sticking around because we've got the amazing John O'Connor tonight as our guest. I'm really looking forward to chatting with him, catching up with him very, very soon. So my name's Dave Dixon. Like I said, I'm a member of Embrace Church in Darlington, and what a great family of people that is. And I'm thankful to God and to them all that I get to do the church thing, do life with them, and so on. And it's great. But listen, this is not just about Embrace Church. This is about celebrating and recognising all that God's doing, and whether that be in Darlington, Teesside, the Northeast, UK, the world, God is on the move, and that's what we want to hear. That's why, we started doing these vlogs, a little bit about, actually, coming up in May, it'll be our first birthday. Wow, that's incredible. All right. And so we started doing this during lockdown, and we just felt we wanted to continue, and it was really it's just great to hear people's stories and of how they kind of came to that point where they made a decision to commit themselves to following Jesus, and what does that mean, and how does that look, and how are they serving him in lots of different ways, and like I said, I'm really, really excited. We'll pop over and say hello to John in a moment or two, just to, he's great that, we've kind of been to and fro with dates, but we're here, finally, we've got our opportunity to kind of gather and so on like that. But listen, if it's your first time, you're really welcome. If it's your, I think we're about 36 in terms of episodes now, you're really welcome. Thanks for sticking with us. And of course, all of these episodes are available via our Facebook page, via the Embrace YouTube channel. If you want to go and watch them again, or actually take the opportunity now. It's always better if you're live, and thank you for tuning in live. And I can just see a few people on my other monitor here is kind of saying hello. So, Sue, great to have you with us. Sue Wrigglesworth, absolute legend. Mama Sue, as we call her in Embrace Church. She's amazing. Mike Connolly is a really good friend of mine. Again, another amazing person from Embrace. And Abby, thanks for joining us from TVCC. And it's great. So, listen, do us a favour, even if you haven't posted, do us a favour. Just share this with your friends, your family online. Stick it all over your socials, because listen, you want to hear this tonight. You will have friends who maybe don't know Jesus who want to hear John's story tonight, and that's what we want to see. We want to pray that people, through what's said, through whatever, through obviously the relationships that we have with them, at least it sparks interest, and actually at the very least, they start asking questions, and it's an opportunity to talk and so on. But we're praying for salvation tonight, and that's what we want. Stephen, thanks for joining us, even and all, sounding like a bit of a police officer there, but I'm sure that's the case. Hello, and all of that kind of stuff. So let me just kind of highlight again what's coming up. Just there's a little bit of a slide really about the wonderful people. Some of them we've had already, which is great. And obviously we've got John tonight, but we've got the wonderful people like, Tony Grage coming up soon as well. It's just an absolute legend, and needs to, you need to hear from him as well about his story, as well as many others that we've got on there. And like I said, I've said in previous episodes, but if you haven't been for a while or haven't heard this before, listen, set your reminders, Wednesdays, 8 till 9. That we do this. I've got these, kind of set up, these Wednesday night interviews, just really relaxed, kind of chatting. We try and make them low key. We try and not do, it's all about Jesus, and again, we're just kind of talking about and reflecting about the impact on our lives and how we're living that out. And so I've got people booked in right now until the end of July, and I'm going into August, and I'm already starting to think about September as well, because it's great, isn't it? Just to be encouraged midweek, and that's part of why we do this, to hear from people about how God is, moving in their areas and then their lives and so on. All right, so great, if you could join us live. Live is always better, because we want to encourage you to interact with us. We want to encourage you to, post your comments, ask your questions, about as we chat with John and hear his story. Maybe you've got questions and you think, oh, wow, and please post them. We want to be able to react to that. Just want to say thanks to Abby and thanks to Mike as well. I can just see on my other monitor that they've, sharing away, which is great. Just again, it'd be really helpful. Share if you're a member of a church, if you do the church thing, just stick it on your church social channels as well. Listen, we want this to go as far as we can, because again, we want this to really just, honor God and just reflect the amazing love that He has for us, and how He's, how Jesus died for us all, and how that impacts us and our lives and so on. All right, listen, I'm gonna come over to John now. Just he's primed and ready. I can see he's on my other monitor. He's smiling. He's good. I've given him a bit of a warning that I said I wouldn't just make him appear on screen, so at least I do that. And we're just gonna go over and just say a quick hello, and then we'll hear a little bit more from him in a moment. So, how are you, buddy? Are you okay?
I'm good.
You're good. Yeah, that stuff. So, I mean, I really appreciate you. Obviously, we know we've tried to and fro with a few dates, but we finally landed the date and we're here, and I really appreciate it, because I know you're a busy fella, and it's great, that, obviously, it'd be great to hear your story and everything else tonight. So, thank you. So what I'm going to do, John, is I'm just going to come back to you in a moment, if that's all right, and then I'm going to do a little bit more spiel, and then play a short video, and then we're into, and we'll get chatting. We'll have a chat just to see, where we go and what happens and things like that. Is that all right? Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Nice one. All right. So, listen, just before we kind of get into things, as always, even though I'm saying that, I've got people booked in and guests booked in until, end of July and August, and starting to think about September and beyond. Always open to, your suggestions about what you kind of things that you want to kind of hear from. And so far, it's, feedback's very positive, I'm pleased to say. But I'm not frightened to kind of change it up a little bit, not for the change's sake, but, again, if there's anything else that you think, it'd be good if you can just do this, why don't you just kind of, drop us a message, via, the Embrace Church Facebook page, or however you want to do that. If you've got my number, please, just drop us a text or whatever. And, make your suggestion, because it'd be great just to kind of, change things around a little bit every now and again. But, of course, all of that is about, like I say, celebrating the church, because really there's only one church, and I make a point of saying this every time. That's church with a capital C. And yes, there's lots of expressions of that, and different locations, and different people do it in different ways. But as long as it's based on the Bible and the truth that is, then of course we want to celebrate and we want to hear from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play this little leader's intro, and then we're going to we'll come to John. We'll just have a kind of chat and we'll catch up with him and see where we kind of get to. But like I say, please make it interactive and post your comments as we go through. All right, here we go. And here we are. Great to see you, mate. Honestly, I really, like I said, I really do thank you for kind of joining us tonight, and really looking forward to kind of spend some time and catching up and stuff like that. Because, I've met you a few times at, things like Stockton Connect, and we've kind of briefly chatted and things like that. But so, but I've never really had a chance to kind of hang out with you and just kind of have a bit of a chat and see what's what. I've heard bits of your story that you've shared. And it'd be great to kind of hear that as well. Are you messing about with your camera there, sir? Are you trying to get your best angle?
I am. Sorry.
You look great. Honestly, let me reassure you.
I'll be still now.
So, I mean, because we discovered as we were chatting before, we're both sticklers for how things look on screen. Now, I did share that I like my chins in high definition and things like that, nice glare and stuff. But, we like things as they are. But as long as we can leave it as it is now, John, that's all right, mate? Because you look great. You look great. All right, okay. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I've met you a few times at Stockton Connect, but other than that, which has been great. I don't really know you that well, really. So it'd be good to kind of get to know you a little bit more and so on, and obviously hear your story, which is really really powerful, and thank God for the amazing kind of story that you've got. I won't go too far into it because I want you to tell the story, not me, and so on. And it would be great to hear, obviously, about your work with the Connect events as well, and Junction 42 and things like that as well. So if we just have a kind of chat through and see where we kind of get to, and obviously if people post, then we'll put them on screen and see where we kind of get to. Does that sound like a plan, buddy? Is that all right?
Good to go, yeah.
Good. Why don't you put yourself into context for us then? Obviously, if people don't, have not met you before, then why don't you kind of, who are you? A little bit of like, are you married or you got kids or whatever, those kind of, day job and all of that kind of stuff. Put yourself into context for us.
Yes. So, yes, I'm married to a fiery Northern Irish woman, which I always say the biggest miracle in my life is staying married for nearly 19 years
Good
to
on you.
a Geordie and a Northern Irish. That's kind of says it all. I've got two beautiful daughters. My eldest Kezia's 13 and my youngest Leonie's 11.
Lovely, great.
Run a ministry. I'm a businessman. Yeah.
Cool. What's the business? And obviously, I know a little bit about the ministry, but what's the business side of things?
Yeah, so I have properties.
Yeah.
I do service accommodation, which is a posh name for holiday lets.
Yeah.
So yeah, do Airbnb, Booking.com, all of that.
Actually, I saw on your social profile, just recently, obviously you finished a property there, and I have to say, it looks lovely. So,
Yeah. I'm in it now. This is it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, what you're going to do at this point is going to pick the camera up on you and give us a wander around and say, we'll leave that maybe some other time. But definitely well worth checking out. Definitely well worth it. Cool. Just, obviously we encourage people to kind of comment as we go through. I'm just going to put this on screen. Hopefully you can see this from Alan. Alan Fraser is the, senior pastor of Embrace Church. And, obviously just saying he met you recently at Taking Ground Leaders Day, which is, which is good. And obviously, again, we really appreciate you being with us, John. So it's fantastic. So, house full of girls. I can relate to that. It's the same here. I've got 4 girls, and that's hence the reason why I have no hair. Those kind of things, and I just kind of like to hide away and do live streams and say I'm busy, those kind of things, just for my own little man space.
The man shed in the house.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've referenced a few times already about your story. So what I tend to do is, not that we need a structure or anything, because I'm sure that you're more than capable. But I just kind of ask those 3 questions really. What was life like before you kind of got to that point? And I suppose that, that's the second question is what was life like at the point when you met Jesus then, and you made that decision to commit your life to him, and, and obviously the third question, as you'd expect, is what's life like, since then, and within all of that, obviously that you've got involved, and you said you run as well as your business side of things, you run a ministry. It'd be great to kind of hear that as well. So, listen, it'd be great if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling us your story, and feel free to share as much or as little detail as you want to in that, really, and again, if that's all right with you, mate, is that all right?
Yeah. So before I go into the story, there's a verse in Galatians 1:5 says, "May all the glory be to God alone."
Yeah.
Throughout time and eternity. Amen. Everything that has happened in my life and everything that is happening in my life is all glory to God.
Yeah, totally.
And you'll hear my story in a minute, but every day I'm humbled by God's grace of how he takes the worst people in this world. The Bible says he takes the foolish things of this world and He uses them for His glory,
Yeah.
and all of it is God's glory. So anyway, to start on that foundation, because I want people. My life is a kind of an arrow to God. I'm appointing people to God,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm not great at that, but I want to be good at that. And I, I grew up in a environment, in a kind of upbringing where Christianity kind of it was just non-existent.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
just in the family, but in the area where I was from. I'm from a small town, Felon in Gateshead,
Yeah.
and I joke about it, but I grew up with criminals. My mom was a criminal, my dad was a criminal, my uncles were a criminal,
Wow.
my granny was a criminal, the dog was a criminal,
Yeah.
everyone was criminal, and so that kind of shapes you into the person that you're going to be.
Mm.
Um, and it was a tough upbringing. I was born in the 70s. I know I only look 25,
Totally.
but
Yeah.
I was born in the early 70s, and it was a tough time. And like there was a lot of violence in the home. But this wasn't just unique to my family. A lot of dads back then were where
Yeah.
I'm from were quite violent,
Aye. Yeah.
because they suffered violence at the hands of their fathers, and so I kind of grew up in that violent upbringing. Then at the age of 11, horrific it was. My dad was released from prison. He was serving 3 or 4 years, and he murdered my mum. Um,
Wow.
and she died instantly in the house. He tried to kill himself, and then they saved him, and he basically got 8 years manslaughter. So that affected me forever from that point on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was tough to start with become even tougher. And I didn't have role models. I didn't have a father figure. I didn't have a mother figure. So I just become uncontrollable. I went through the care system. They couldn't control me in there. I would smash up the care homes,
Right.
you know, and I was it's something called a ward of court. So I was basically a ward of court until I was 18. And they couldn't keep me anywhere. So I had an aunt, which was my mom's brother's wife, and the coach just said, "Look, go live with her because there's nowhere can keep you."
Wow.
Um, and it was just a free for all. She couldn't control us. We took drugs, brought criminals around. Yeah, so it kind of, and I hung around all the kids. So when I was, say, 14, 15, I was hanging around guys who were like late 20s, early 30s, organized crime. Um, and that was my life.
Yeah.
That was my life kind of growing up. Um, no hope. I became a heroin addict when I was 18. I started taking heroin. I kind of took most drugs you can take. I joke about it, but I probably could have become a pharmacist.
Yeah.
At the amount of things I knew about
Yeah.
drugs, and
Wow.
I was injecting drugs, heroin into my veins. Um, yeah, and it was just a very hopeless situation.
Yeah.
Prison. I've been in 7 prisons. I've been in I can name them top of my head, but most of the prisons in our region and even outside, I've been in prisons in Wetherby, Preston, Durham, Home House, Lower Newton, Accrington, Castleton, and some of them like Durham and stuff like 20 times. It's not exaggerating,
Right. Yeah.
and well known to the authorities at that time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So I mean,
So
obviously that little video I played earlier, which is a kind of just kind of the lead into the the chats that we have, really, interviews and stuff, and I play it quite regularly. It talks about leadership, and we know that leaders really leadership is all about influence, isn't it? We're all leaders of some kind because we all influence each other in some way, to a certain degree. So clearly, the really traumatic kind of experiences you had when you were younger, and like you say, your family shall we say, the dynamics of your family and the criminality and everything. Obviously, the big influences on yourself, and as you're kind of growing up. And I don't know, but that might. Because you said this, give this kind of impression that wasn't just your family, in terms of the violence and how maybe people behave towards one another, and that was the norm really. I'm guessing then and that negative kind of influence on your life. And do you ever remember when you were kind of younger, prior to obviously, and thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability already in telling your story in the horrific circumstances of obviously your father murdering your mother, and again, that's not an easy thing for me to say, never mind kind of you to live through, and understandably, like you said quite clearly, it lived with you forever. But did you ever kind of think about obviously, did you ever question it? Like, this isn't normal, or is this the norm kind of thing? Obviously, like you say, if you've got, it sounded like generations of people who are kind of criminals within your family, you're behaving in certain ways, then did you just think that's how life was? Is that kind of normal in that sense?
Um, yeah, it's a tough thing to. I think if you've got loved ones who kind of walk you through grief,
Yeah.
then that's a different thing. But for me, it was as if I was engaged in a community of people who kind of got my mind off what I was going through. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you've got a loving family around you, they can actually walk you through grief and help you
Yeah.
deal with the situation that's happened, and then hopefully come out the other end. Whereas with me, I had all of these distractions around me, which was drugs, crime, and the guys I was hanging out with. That was a distraction
Right. Yeah.
um, from what I had to face. And it's funny. I always say this because we work in prisons. I always say, it's amazing what the human psyche, or whatever you call it, or soul can endure.
Yeah.
You know, like I've seen guys at the bottom. People say, "Oh, you hit the bottom and you'll accept Christ," but I've seen people who've kind of gone further than that and still haven't accepted Christ.
Wow. Yeah.
So I just think there's something in us just can cope with a lot of toughness.
Yeah.
As it happens.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Some people can cope with more than others.
Yeah. Can. Yeah.
Um, So you just kind of go through it. You just deal with it the best you can. Even though I admit back then I didn't have a time to grieve. I
Yeah.
didn't grieve until years later. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, you mentioned it a couple of times when you telling your story there about a lack of hope. And I suppose if you're feeling like no hope, then again it's a destructive kind of cycle. Then, isn't it? Like you said, of involvement with the care system and courts and legal side of things, and then ending up with your aunt and said bringing criminals round to, and all, and you're obviously um, and every kind of drug you said that you were taking, and like you say, bouncing around obviously the different jails and things like that, and so is that kind of like you say how you felt? There's like no hope, so it's like what's the point, and no kind of limitations then in that sense. So
They obviously I'm kind of explaining the negative things, and there was also some good that came out of that.
yeah,
And I think I was always entrepreneurial, and I think a lot of guys who come out of prison and crime are very entrepreneurial.
yeah,
So I got a high not just from taking drugs, but actually from making money,
yeah,
and from coming up with, like, although a lot of it was criminality, of finding ways where I could outdo someone to gain something.
yeah,
Um, and that kind of drives you, doesn't it? That drove me every day to want to make money. Um, but I think obviously that was in a negative light, but
mm,
but it's still who I am today. I'm still entrepreneurial.
yeah,
Um, So there were, yeah, so there was good and bad, and I think it prepares you, that type of stuff, for your future, for the purpose for your future. And God's a God who redeems situations, and can
Absolutely. Yeah.
turn that round, can't he, for good?
Yeah. So what, obviously within all of that lifestyle and cycle and experiences of, like you say, growing up and being involved in crime and drugs and things like that, and visiting and I'm sorry if I laugh, visiting a number of, like you said, the tour of Her Majesty's establishments kind of stuff, and obviously having experiences of those. At what point then did how did you get to that point when you encountered Jesus and decided made that decision to say God is real, Jesus is who he said he was, he did everything, and he redeems, like you said, you talked about. And what were the circumstances around, how did you get to that point, and what happened?
Yeah, it's a strange thing, and I hear this a lot from people. I always believed there was a God.
Right. Yeah.
Even from a young age, I can't even explain it. I just knew that there was definitely something more to life
Yeah.
than what I was seeing. But obviously, circumstances and the culture you're in kind of stops that stops you from seeing that. But I met a guy who I knew from my area, and I saw the change in his life. And came
Right.
up to me one day, and I've shared this thousands of times. He came up to me and said, "John, Jesus can get you off heroin." And
Right.
and that was it. He didn't give me the 3 point gospel.
Yeah.
He didn't say read your Bible. He didn't say come to church. He just said that one phrase: Jesus can get you off heroin. And I was like, pardon me French, but I was like, who the hell is Jesus? Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, I thought Jesus was an old wooden cross that you either put round your neck or he's up on an old religious church building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just to make a phrase like that was like a dynamic phrase to me. It's like, how can, like, it kind of challenged everything, has he got power, is he alive? But it stuck with us, and I couldn't get out of my head. And then in 1999 I was in Durham jail, and I was end of myself. Back then you didn't there was no detox in prison. Now they get like methadone and all that programs in prisons. There was nothing like that when I was in prison. You went to prison, you cold turkey, and that was it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and I was cold turkey, and my pad mate was asleep. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget this. And I just looked up like that, and I said, "Jesus, if you can get me off heroin, I'll live for you." I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the chapel. The chaplain hadn't come. It was nothing like that, and it was just this random prayer. And what happened was the presence of God came on me in the bed, and I knew God was real from that moment on.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
hard to explain it. It was like my body was shaking. Um, and listen to this, right? This is the biggest miracle of all. My younger brother at the time was dealing heroin in Accrington Prison, HMP Northumberland now. And they come the day after I prayed that prayer. They knocked on my door, went, "Pack your bags," because I had just been sentenced. And Durham's like a remand prison, so once you're sentenced, they move you to Accrington,
Right.
because it's a convicted prison. So it's like you spend the rest of your sentence there. And they went, "How are you, O'Connor? You going to home house?" And I was like, "Home house? Why you take me to home house in Stockton?" It's like, it's another remand prison. So home house was the same as Durham
Right.
at that time. It was a remand prison, and he just went, "Shut up, pack your bags, you're going." And I knew that was the Lord, because He got me away from my brother. I was in home house. There was no drugs. I got a really good job in the kitchen, so I was eating good food.
Yeah.
It was funny. I would come back on the wings, because you'd eat garlic and normal food that you eat out here, but in prison that's like a rarity.
Yeah.
Everything's stodgy and bland, and I'd come back on the wings and I'd be stinking of garlic. But I think God used that to build me up and get me away from the people who could influence us back to that old life, and that was the start of it, really.
Yeah.
Start of the change in my life.
Listen, I've got a question. Because obviously you've told us quite openly. Your experience of drugs. You could have been a pharmacist yourself. Like you say, wide ranging, shall we say? I'm interested about that. When you're in your cell and you pray that prayer, and maybe we've got people who who don't know Jesus, not in a relationship with Jesus themselves, and have never made that decision and stuff, and they're hearing this, obviously hearing your story, and so how, and you were cold turkey, and how did you know it was the presence of God and not, because you said that you knew that you knew, and you knew and you knew, and how did you know that when it, and that experience, was it different to anything that you'd experienced through drugs, or cold turkey or anything else like that? How did you know?
Well, there was two things that happened to me, and we know in the Bible it says, "Whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved."
Yeah,
And so I called upon His name. That was it. And then there was two things happened. I felt this presence around me. I always say when I'm in person, I get like a jug, and I describe it like an invisible jug was poured on my body,
right.
and
Yeah,
I felt this like presence around me. It's hard to explain. Me, pardon me, it was asleep, but I felt like everything widened up, and I heard these words, and that was the next bit. I heard the voice of God audibly in my head, whether it was in my ear or mind, and I just heard these words: "Son, I love you. I've
wow,
always loved you, and I've always wanted to come into your life." And I just knew right there and then that God loved me, and that He was my Father, and I
absolutely.
didn't have a father. And I was going to share this at the start, and I think I should now anyway. Christians talk about the Trinity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
Well, that I know the Trinity very closely. God become, that Jesus called God the Father Abba,
Yeah,
Daddy,
yeah,
and God the Father become me dad in that cell. But Jesus become me brother, and Jesus called the disciples brother,
yeah,
and then the Holy Spirit came inside of me in my body to reveal everything God had done for my life. And He's
yeah,
still doing that now. All Christians, the Holy Spirit's revealing the plan of God for their life.
yeah,
And it's ongoing, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely.
And so I kind of experienced all that. It wasn't just this like random. I just experienced the nature of God,
Mm.
the fatherhood of God, where I didn't have a dad, and he became me dad.
Yeah,
Um, and and they just become very close to us. And it was just I had this intimate time where I was released from prison, um, and I just grew from there, Dave.
right.
I got hungry for the Bible. Uh, I just had this amazing intimate time. But the amazing thing about all of this, right at the start, was when I got out of prison, I got a flat. I kind of start going to a church. I was in a local church, City Church in Newcastle. It's like an NFI church,
Yeah, yeah,
because the guy Gavin, who I'd bumped into years later, who told me that, discipled us. So
right.
I met him again when I got out, and he had come out of a job, and so for 2 years he didn't have a job, but he discipled us, took us to church. And the first thing that happened to us was God spoke to me and said, "John, you have to forgive your dad. You cannot move on with your life unless you forgive your dad,
Yeah,
and
wow. Yeah.
and you really need to forgive him." And I was like, "No way! I hated me dad, Dave.
Mm.
I've got two younger brothers and a sister, and all of their lives were destroyed by that man.
Yeah,
And because I was the eldest, I felt this protection over my younger
of
brothers and
course. Yeah,
sister. So I hated him for all my life, basically. Despised him. But God says, "No, John, I've forgiven you so much. You have to forgive him."
wow.
And I was like, "Well, if you want me to forgive him, you're gonna have to change my heart towards him." And he did. I started going around. Because he's local. He's still alive. He's obviously remarried. I start, doing practical things for him, like cutting his lawn,
Yeah.
And I remember the first time he saw us, he was sitting on the rug, and I just, he's because getting older, and he just sat there and he said, "John, look, you can take all of your anger out on me, and you can lay into me now and get it over with." And I was like, "Dad, I forgive you." I says, "I love you, man." It's like God loves you, and I think what happened was, Dave, when I become a Christian, God really revealed to me that who am I to judge me, Dad? I'm capable of doing even
Yeah.
worse,
Yeah.
you know. And so, yeah, that was the journey. That was the start of the change in my life. It was real repentance, It wasn't like this superficial. It was God gave me a repentant heart.
Yeah. How did your dad react then when you said that? Then you're forgiven. Jesus loves you, kind of stuff.
He didn't. Yeah, most of my family didn't get it. They thought I was just gone off. They thought I'd lost the plot.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Dave, right? My life got better, and God prospered my life,
Mm.
and the rest of my family's lives kind of either stayed stagnant or got worse.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Initially they think you're a wacko,
Yeah.
but then they say, "Whoa, this must be something here," because they're prospering, not just physically in themselves, but like the things around them.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that the kind of reaction as well with your friends and things like you obviously your associates about hang on he's, like you said he's gone wacko here what's happened obviously a big change from coming out of home house and or wherever you were and all these things and like you said big changes and that discipleship people could see that change in you. Did you have those kind of conversations with people
Yeah, 2 seconds, Dave. I've just realised my battery's not on. 2 seconds.
So obviously, why John just sorts out his battery and stuff like I mean, it's amazing as just so far. Let's recognize that it's because it's easy. It sounds easy, to share it, and you share it so easily, but you know to be in a relationship with God who redeems, like you say, who forgives, and to that huge step that absolutely we need God's grace and strength to be able to kind of forgive and in your situation and that, and then obviously to come out and have your conversations then with associates, friends that you used to be involved in all sorts of things with, and again those kind of conversations where they you think you've gone wacko but actually can see, like you said, God amazingly prospering your life in lots of different ways and stuff. So it's amazing, it's amazing, the side of things. So where did you kind of go to next then? Obviously, you got you talk about discipleship, as this guy, spent a lot, 2 years or whatever it was, at City Church, etc. So being up in Newcastle, obviously life changing. Where did that, because I'm just conscious of time as well, like as always, I always say that time speeds up during this hour. We want to get into, we want to hear about your involvement with Junction 42 and the Connect events and what's happening at the moment, what you're involved with as well.
Yeah.
So where did you kind of, fill in the blanks for us, what's happening now to where we were before?
So I think God's always, and the way I describe it, in one hand's ministry, and in the other hand's business. Do you know? And a lot of times the business kind of sustains the ministry. And if you read the Bible, Apostle Paul was a tent maker, wasn't he? And
Yeah,
he was an apostle with ministry, but he also his apostleship kind of brought business, you know. And so I think very early on, God revealed to me, going back to what I said earlier, that I was still an entrepreneur,
yeah,
and business was a big part of my life,
yeah,
and he gave me like prophetic promises from the Bible that he was gonna bless that area of business, but also ministry was going to be huge. And then I fast forward, I met Joanne. I was helping this guy in a rehab, and Joanne was also working in Low Newton prison with the females, and she was helping this girl who had just been released, who was a heroin addict.
right,
We met each other. I just thought, wow, who is this woman? Like, she's good, and I always praise Joanne because she's got a heart after God. She's a director of Junction 42.
Yeah.
She has like nearly 30 staff now, national, working in every single prison in the whole of the nation.
Wow.
But when we met each other, we were homeless. We were
Right.
basically we didn't have anywhere to live. We got married. People say, "Where are you living?" And we just knew God had this place for us, and they would look at us and think, "He's for real." He's like, "Haven't you like where he's?" And we ended up staying with this woman for a week,
Right.
in her farmhouse. And then obviously the housing association got in touch with us, and they give us a beautiful flat, but we rented. Um, but this is what God does, doesn't he? He gives you promises. Joseph, for instance, he was given promises by God, but look what happened to him. He ended up in a pit,
Yeah.
then as a slave, and then as a prisoner. And they reckon it took 22 years for Joseph to come into his full ministry. I was like, wow. I was listening to a preacher recently, said it took 22 years. So I was like, God's not in the business of speeding things up sometimes, is he?
No.
And he lets us go on the journey.
Aye.
So anyway, he gave us all those promises. I met Joanne. She was involved in prison, and it was kind of a regional prison work. And I was doing business at the time, so I had a retail business.
Yeah.
But I was also helping out with a Connect community which they had started. And the reason the Connect communities kind of started was, or the first one was because the guys who were getting out of prison weren't connecting with the local church,
Yeah.
and we tried to connect these guys to the local church, but it was just this big leap getting into the local church, and because they didn't have relationship with the local church, it just didn't work, and you've got guys scattered all over the place. So normally they want to be where you are because you've built a relationship with them
Yeah.
in the prison.
Yeah.
So then what we realized was, do you know what? We need to create some sort of space. People always say to us, use the churches. They are churches, because
Mm.
the Bible kind of defines a church of a body of believers who meet together. It's like you
Yeah.
said earlier, with a capital C.
Yeah.
But so they started coming in and it started building and building and building. And then I kind of come to work for Junction 42. I come to kind of be part of it. And my heart, Dave, is multiplication.
Yeah.
So if I think something's working, and I've always been like this, then let's multiply it
Yeah.
10 times, 50 times, 100 times. If it works, well, it works,
Yeah.
let's multiply this. So kind of I took on the role of I stepped into the leadership of Newcastle Connect. The guy Peter Grant, who was you obviously have heard of him.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No, Peter. Yeah. Yeah.
He was leading it to start with. He was obviously working in the prison, did a great job, solid pastor. The
Yeah.
guys absolutely love Peter. Um, but when I took it on, I wasn't just happy with one. I wanted a lot more
Mm.
because in all of our region, there's places of desperation where guys still need to connect in a kind of a ministry setting, a church setting, and that's kind of where it went from there. So we got them in Middlesbrough, Stockton, Durham, Newcastle, Gateshead, Glasgow, and Edinburgh.
Right.
Um,
Fantastic.
and I believe it's going to be a national work. I believe the Connect Network's going to go national and even international,
Yeah.
because we also work very closely with the local church. So I love the local church,
Mm.
and God's blessed us and give us grace with church leaders who get what we do and understand the DNA and kind of align with us.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, that's some of the stuff we're doing. It's
Yeah.
not all of it, but it's some of it.
Let me just put this on. I mean, obviously, Nat Moody is a good friend of mine. He was actually featuring last week in the episode. So again, just really appreciating what you're sharing. And he put that on a while ago, but Stephen, out, good friend of ours, has just put this on as well. Inspirational as always. Absolutely. And if it wasn't for the Connect community, then Stevenson, he wouldn't be where he is now. And obviously in his life story and things. And we've got Stephen booked in at some point. Excuse me. Sorry about that. We've just had to change the date just briefly. But he's going to come on and tell his story as well. But I know he's another great example of God just really moving through him, and like you say, in that community, and I know he's involved in a number of things now with Eden and things like that other projects and so on. So I hadn't realised actually there was that many connects. I knew obviously the one, I knew of Newcastle, I knew of Middlesbrough, I knew of Stockton, which is the one I tend to go to every now and again. Which I have to say, I love going. I really do. I would. I think I would love to go every week, but I just got to balance things up, obviously with the priorities like family and the bits and bobs, and trying to balance it all out. But when I go there, I mean, I love Stockton Connect in particular. Yeah, I think obviously Pete Conroy is an absolute legend, and he's been on and done an episode for us previously. Well worth, if you haven't seen that one, kind of hearing his story and his involvement. And Brian and Stella Jones as well, who run the Moses Project in Stockton, absolutely brilliant. And I've actually known them for a lot longer than I thought, because they were friends with my parents when I was younger, when I was a kind of early teenager. I didn't realise at first because we'd lost touch, and then it just kind of clicked and so on. But they'd been as part, done an episode for us on Embrace Live as well, and just all about the Moses Project. Now that came to be as so great. Special times. I love going, and obviously just hanging out, just getting to know people and serving in different ways, and be able to do that. So what about give us so I totally get. I love it as well. What you said about multiplication. It's working. Let's do it more. Let's do it other places. I like that. I'm that kind of person as well. And so I hadn't realised there were so many, which is brilliant here. And absolutely pray that it does go. Obviously it's national, but international and things, and absolutely. What about? Can you give us obviously it's good to hear about the impact that it has. Is there anybody who kind of, you don't have to give all details, but is there anybody who's kind of a real example who's kind of come through Connect community, and then like you say, you're connecting with local church leaders, and the local church is really important, and kind of those leaders who get the DNA of what Connect is, and actually, so an individual who's maybe come out of out of prison into Connect, and then is kind of entering the local church, and is I would say Stephen's probably a success story in all of that as well. But
Yeah, honestly, there's just so we do it. I was telling you earlier before the live that
yeah,
we do something called Stories of Hope,
yeah,
where we do kind of professional kind of productions of people's stories and testimonies. There's just, I'm not even exaggerating, but there's just been tens of, of guys, women, females who've kind of moved on over the years, because it's been going on
yeah,
for like a lot of years now. We've got a guy at the minute, Kirk, who Miliband, who's in Newcastle, raising up, real leader, helping the homeless. I could just reel off names. We've got Tex, one of our guys who was in prison. We give him a guitar in prison. He spoke to the House of Lords.
wow,
We Cassie, one of our girls who leads our worship. She come from a crime background. Her dad was a criminal. She got saved, raised up through the Connect community. Now has a master's in
amazing,
theology. Do you know? I wished I had a book, a little black book of every single person that
yeah,
God has changed over the years, because most of them, have gone on to employment, jobs, marriage, just stability in life,
yeah,
and because they're like that, they feel, well, I don't need to come to Connect community anymore because I'm no longer that kind of needy. and you know, I'm like, perfect, job done. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we're about, isn't it? We're about causing transformation. The Bible says the gospel is the power of God
Yeah.
on salvation. Everyone believes so that power brings transformation. And just like me, you know, like say you know, the thing is, Dave, right? This was 15 years ago. I was coming up the coast road in Newcastle, and I was crying out to God, "What you got for my life? What's the plan for my life?" And do you know, have you ever been in that place where you've just cried out the top of your
Yeah.
voice? I was kind of screaming at God, and I heard these words, "John, one day you will plant churches." And I went back and told my wife, and she started laughing. Uh, she was like, "Plant churches?" You know, I was like a young boy in the faith.
Yeah.
But I knew, right, that one day my whole passion in life, forget about business. Business is just a means to an end
Yeah.
to fund what I'm doing and to contribute to what I'm doing. But my passion is to plant communities where transformed lives are raised up into leadership
Come on.
and
Yeah.
they change the world.
Yeah.
That's my passion. Now, a lot of our guys haven't got that passion. Their lives are changed and they move on. They have families, and which is good. But mine came back in itself to to multiplication again. God did it in
Mm.
my life. Could we see hundreds, thousands of people just like my life, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I spend my life, Dave. Every day I wake up, I'm thinking, where can I plant a connect community?
Yeah. So where's to go next then? You know, give us a. You know, is there any indications or any kind of potential leads and stuff like that that you want to divulge at this point? You know, not that it's top secret, but you know that you want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, Darlington,
Darlington, amazing.
Darlington. Well, I've met a couple of leaders in Darlington already. Carlisle,
Right.
Carlisle is massive at the minute because a lot of our guys get out of prison into Carlisle.
Right.
Um, I'm part of networks as well, Dave. So I'm part of networks of believers. So in the northeast, I'm part of something called As One, which is church leaders,
Mm.
apostolic leaders. In Teesside, I've started going to the Taken Ground meetings, and I and I've really, like, God's given me such a heart for Teesside in a massive way
Great.
because we've obviously Connect Stockton, Connect Middlesbrough, and I've been working with Martin Dunkley because he oversees the two Connects. He's the partner church.
Yeah.
But my job is just networking, Dave. I need to be around church leaders, and I always, the way I describe it when we plant these Connect communities is I'm here to wash the feet of the local church. Do you know,
Yeah.
we
Amazing.
know what we're doing with this clientele. We know how to minister. We know how to raise up people. We know, and we've got a model. It's not just this random thing. We've got a very proven model that we come in, we set up, we form leadership. We know how to partner with the people. We find a venue. You've seen it in action,
Yeah.
you know, and that didn't just happen by chance.
No.
You know, we've learned over the years, and we've honed in that model
Yeah.
of so we can plant our community anywhere as long as we've got the elements that we know needs to be in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But it's good. God's good. God's like, the gospel works, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you what, John, I'm going to put your contact details on, you know, that slide that we talked about earlier and stuff like that, because, you know, I've no doubt that people either watching live now, you know, are getting loads, you know, are inspired, you know, by this. And I always want to do this. I always want to say, well, you know, this is amazing. You know, you need to kind of be involved. You know, how can they get involved, and obviously put the contact details on, and you know, what does ever that kind of look like. And I've got another question I'll ask you after this as well, actually, and then by that time we should be looking to wrap up. But you know, again, you know, as always, there's so much more we could talk about, for sure. Let me put this slide on with your details on there in terms of how people can get, you know, obviously in touch with yourself, and we've, you know, deliberately put the connected logo on there and Junction 42, and obviously you've got your address and support. You know, can you, what different ways can we get in touch and support Connect or Junction 42?
Yeah, the obviously Junction 42 are always looking for volunteers because we've got a production hub. So we just during COVID, we supplied 170,000 faith packs direct into prison
Wow.
cells.
Yeah.
So we become a production centre, and we work in every single prison in all of the UK, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and we work with every chaplaincy in every prison. So we're looking for volunteers to kind of make these packs up.
Yeah.
Things like putting in Bibles, CDs, and it's creative packs as well, because the guys are banged up 23 and a half hours a day.
Yeah.
So that's one element. If with this type of work, it's a gospel work. Your giving can really bless this work because we're focused on the gospel.
Yeah.
And like Paul said, you're giving into your heavenly bank account. You're
Yeah.
giving into into souls in eternity. And then thirdly, are you part of a church that would really want to see a work like this happen?
Yeah.
Do you know, is it already happening? Because Paul says he didn't build on another man's work. So when I come to a place, I want to know, are you doing this already to some extent? And is there any way we can help you?
Yeah.
So have you got a heart for this? Has your church got a heart for this? Is it already happening, or would you like to see it started? Email me on the john.o'connor@junction42.org,
Yeah.
and I'll come and visit you, and see any way I can help you. That's my job.
Yeah.
Wherever you're from in the nation, I'll come and visit you.
Amazing. Amazing. Listen, I'm sure you're more than happy for people to get in touch, obviously, in those details. I want to encourage everybody to, it's very easy to do it, just with your social media accounts. Just follow the socials of Junction 42 and connect and keep in touch that way. It's really easy to do. But like you say, I'm sure continue to hold John and an amazing team in Junction 42, like you say, and the connected, venues, communities, in your prayers, and give. The reality is, these things don't just happen. You need resources to make them happen, and so if you can, I'm sure a financial gift on a regular basis would really be appreciated. And like you say, it's sowing into the kingdom. Absolutely.
And I just share something,
Yeah,
Dave, just
please.
on that.
Yeah,
So during the pandemic, every charity's got cash reserves. So they have to have a portion of cash reserves,
yeah,
legally as a charity. And what Junction 42 did during the pandemic, they spent 200,000 on these faith packs from their cash reserves
right.
in faith, right? In faith, you know, and God supplied, like astronomically. What we got a donation from one of the biggest car dealerships in the country, Virtue Motors,
Yeah.
give £140,000 check.
Wow.
You know, and this is the God we serve. If we step out in faith
Yeah.
and preach the gospel,
Totally.
Jesus said, go in all the world and preach the gospel. Well, for us, that is every single prison, every single prison, preach the gospel, which we have.
Yeah.
And God has supplied all I need. So anyone giving, you're giving into a fruitful work that is gospel focused.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. The question I wanted to ask you, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit in the last part there, is you talked about obviously connect communities springing up because you've got people who have come in out of prison and actually not making that journey or transition into a local church for whatever reason, and I'm sure it's a variety of reasons why, but and that's why Connect kind of was in between, if you like, the halfway kind of house in that sense to help that and springing out. My question is, how can in your thoughts really, how can churches be better at welcoming people who've got that have had involvement in crime and that past, and welcome them into church, because I'm sure it's got to be a two-way thing, hasn't it? So how can Embrace Church be better or the church, be doing that? What does that look like? What would you?
It's partnership,
Yeah,
Dave, and it's partnership with what we're doing. We meet with the church partners for a lunch once a year. We take them out for lunch.
yeah,
We did this yesterday, and Martin Dunkley just kind of shared his heart about what happens and what it looks like.
yeah,
And he said what they found is as they partnered with us and they set up these missional communities, because remember, it's the church that oversees these. We're kind of there in the background just facilitating, but it's the church that has ownership.
yeah,
And what he found is they got a lot of his church members start getting involved. And as they got involved, because there was something practical to get their kind of teeth into,
yeah,
it really encouraged their faith. And and I think in the past, what we've thought of is this type of work happens with like individual ex-offenders coming to church, befriend them, but that can be sometimes awkward, can't it? Because what do you say if you're not from that background? And it's just this like conflict. Whereas in a community, connect community, people get involved with making the food, church worship, like you've
yeah,
done the worship there,
yeah,
Dave. There's just a way. There's many ways for the church to serve in it, and it kind of sparks up their faith that wow, these people are amazing. I've got
yeah,
my favorite verse in the Bible, and I shared this on the Connect community this morning, was where Jesus said, the woman, who washed his feet
yeah,
with her hair, and he said, "When I come in your house, you didn't give me a drink, but this woman washed my feet with her hair." And then he goes on to say, he says, "Because those who are forgiven much love much, but those who are forgiven little love little." And the thing with guys from this background, Dave, they're so, God has forgiven them so much
yeah,
that they have so much love for people. And I
yeah,
think people from church background or people who've never been in this background look at these guys through the eyes of love and say, wow, these guys are amazing. They've got such love.
yeah,
Uh, and I think that's where the barriers are broken down. So going on to your question is partner with us,
yeah,
you know, you know, let us facilitate a connect community part of your church. And at the end of it, it's something you can take great pride in, that we've got a missional work. And TVC, who we partner with, they've got loads of stuff going on. They've
yeah,
got CAP, Eden, they've got 313, but they can also take pride in the fact that they've got missional communities, and it's part of their bigger church. And they've even baptized. I remember a few weeks ago they baptized 4 people from Middlesbrough Connect
yeah,
who came into their local church.
yeah,
You know, so it's a kingdom thing, isn't it?
totally.
Kingdom partnership, and I love the church. I love church leaders. They've got such a hard job, and any way I can help them, pray for them, serve them, then God's given me that grace to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, amazing, amazing, mate. Listen, as always, time's run out. We're after 9, and I just want to continue, but as always, we will try and we'll wrap up now, and I appreciate like you say, your time. I don't know if you can hear, but my home studio's in my conservatory, and you can hear the rain pelting. It just seems to be great timing as always. Like I say, the thing is at Dixon Towers, if we have a spare room, we tend to fill it with kids. So that's the thing. I get stuck in my man cave in the conservatory. Anyway. Listen, thank you ever so much for giving up your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And everybody, listen, whether you're tuning live, it's been great that you've been with us, or catching up on this. Listen, share this far and wide, because everybody needs to know about the amazing work at Junction 42. Like John said a number of times, just in answering that question just then about, if you want to, know more, then get in touch. If you want to partner with John and Junction 42 and the Connect communities, get in touch and have a conversation. Invite, like John's already said, he's willing to come and chat with church leaders, etc. You know, if you are a church leader, get in touch. If you're not a church leader, it doesn't matter. Go and talk to your church leaders and tell them to get in touch, and you know, be proactive in all of this, because listen, this is kingdom stuff, like John said a number of times. I totally, yeah, and I love it. I really do. Like I say, I love Stockton Connect and the work that goes on there, and I know that is replicated in all of the other communities as well. And this needs to happen. So, you know, support John, support, you know, obviously, you know, the work, amazing work of Junction 42 in those different ways. Prayer, giving, finances, you know, you can see the impact that that's having and just how God is providing. And you could be part of that picture. Keep up to date with everything that they're doing, and you know, again, keep praying for these people who have had these life experiences for lots of different reasons why, have come into Connect communities after spending some time in prison, etc., experiences real challenges, but God is just doing amazing stuff in their lives, and support them, and you know, and all those kind of things. I'm just so thankful for John, the work that you do, and the amazing people in the, you know, Junction 42 and the Connect community teams are just amazing. It's great to be a part of personally, in a small way. But yeah, come down. You know, even I have to say, even Ma Dixon, my mother, has helped. You know, helps out when she can at Stockton Connect, and she'll go down and just chat with people, get to know them, serve. You know, in whatever way. It's really, really, it's great. So really want to encourage people to do that. Anyway, mate, thank you very much. We're going to kind of wrap things up there, and you know, if you want to just kind of stay on just briefly after we finish the live, and then I'll just, you know, just kind of round things up then. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say to everybody else, you know, thank you, John. You know, it's been great to hear your story and the work that you're involved with. It's been brilliant, like I say. And if you want to get in touch, then you know, John's more than happy to get, you know, to be in contact with you. All right. So listen, you know, every Wednesday, like I said. You know, we've got a programme, we've got people booked in from right up until August time, heading into September, and so on. Set your reminders, 8 till 9. So, thank you for joining us live tonight. Thank you for catching up, however you've done that. It's great that you know. Try and tune in next week, it'll be great. All right? And take care. Have a good week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.